Good afternoon. Welcome to the lecture on Architectural Design 1 for the second level studies for students of architecture at Wrocław University of Science and Technology. Today I will be discussing the higher schools architecture. Please note that I am not able to answer you on live chat because what I'm seeing is basically the screen that I'm showing you. We will start from a short Mentimeter question. So from your own experience, you've been to many schools. Of course, it doesn't necessarily have to be the universities, but different schools. So use this code to enable at Mentimeter.com's website the task. This is this task. You can go to Menti.com and use the code 58962025, 589625, to answer what I was missing the most in my school. As I promised, the lecture will have live elements, so I'm waiting for your answers, and we will see if these answers will follow, the lecture will follow your answers, so the lecture will show how to solve these things that you've been missing from your schools. I'll just refresh. If some of you cannot use the code, you can use this QR code on your mobile phones. Yes, we are starting to have the answers. Cafeterias. That's a very important element of every larger campus, larger university. Communication. I don't know which communication. Is it like communication around the space that was not proper? At some schools, it happens that it's very complicated and very hard to find some things. So the layout is not clear. I will be discussing that. Places to spend the breaks. That's a very good answer. I will be talking about the places to spend breaks today. And what is very important at the campuses is that they are recreational spaces, so they have greenery and they have access to huge amounts of natural light. Spending my spare time, yes, so cafes, recreation, outside lessons. Yes, there are some universities that have outside lessons, and I will show you that university today. Nice place to eat lunch, definitely. Exterior courtyard, places to meet, space to study. That's a very important thing. And today I will be discussing and showing you spaces where you can study, where you can learn, spaces that help you to concentrate on the task that you're supposed to do, that you want to do in your time between the classes, for example, directly at the university. Apprenticeships, yes, that's a huge problem. That's also a problem of architecture because there are sometimes there's not enough space for students. I think that we have enough very good, very good answers. If you like, I will show these answers at my Facebook page, so you can see all the answers that appeared during that time. And now let's see how much of the lecture will cover the things that you told us about. So first thing that you've mentioned is communication. And communication is connected, clear communication is connected to spatial functional plans in various solution. Don't worry, there will be more Mentimeter today in this lecture. There are 3 parts of Mentimeter. So we will do more live discussion as it's possible between us. So let's see the plan types. Here you've got the list of the plan types. And of course, we can read through this, but I think that most interesting will be for us to see these plan types. So we have open plans here in the form of central space that allows us to access different parts of the layout. We can have different types of alleys, and then we of course have two alleys. So one alley is a corridor, which is lit by natural light, which is very important, and you've already shown that in your answers. And we have rooms, and they are also lit with natural light. It's easy to ventilate. I will show you that later. So it's a quite reasonable, quite economical layout. The layout with two corridors, and the rooms around it. The corridor is usually dark unless it's lit with some skylights or the side light. And this type is the most economic one. It's got the maximum usable surface as possible. So our D and E plans, 4 alleys and 6 alleys. They have the rooms which are dark rooms inside. In the dark rooms, we usually have laboratories, some service rooms. We can have some small conference rooms which are not meant for longer stay. We can have some staff rooms which are, again, if you are a staff, you shouldn't stay in your room too long unless it's an office. Then you should have natural light. We have plants with courtyards, and the courtyards can be lit, or it can be a courtyard that is dark, that it has a room inside. And we can have mixed types of plants, and these are the plants that are not clear, that are hard to use, and you can get lost in it. I was studying the plants more for other purposes as well. And nowadays, because that typology is very classical, typical, kind of historic, nowadays we have so many different types of plants that we can use. And in these different types of plants, we can have landscape type. So we have some conference rooms, some meeting rooms, places to study sprinkled around the layout. Of course, this layout is very interesting, but it's not economic at all. And again, we have a problem with direct access of natural light, because in some countries, of course, this kind of access is enough if we have glazed this wall and this one. But in Poland, it's not enough, especially during the winter season, which is quite long in Poland. We have also layouts with the cores, and they can have different shapes. If we talk about different shapes, we can have different types of letters like Y, like Z. You can have plants which are mixed. So they are mixing the corridor type with an open landscape type. And that kind of plan is quite interesting and develops now very quickly. And we can have very weird organic shaped plants, which are usually the outcome of the architect's thinking. Let's see how it looks like, this typology, in the practice. And here we see the University of Alvar Aalto, which was designed by Alvar Aalto, and the architectural faculty that is there is named by him. And you can see that you have part of the plan, part of different plans. So you have the corridor plans, you have the connections, and you have some freestanding buildings, and it's all connected into one university. It comes from 1967, and it connects many different rooms. What is interesting, the main room that I've shown you has the audience of 1,000 of viewers, and it can be divided asymmetrically into two audiences, 1/500, 1/300 of students, listeners. Here we see that plan in practice. So you can see that you have one alley corridor here. You have a double free alley corridor here. You have courtyard inside, which here at this university is meant for students for recreation. It's green, it's very pleasant. Even during a little bit colder months, it's still very nice space for students. It's protected from the wind, so it gives a nice microclimate. You can see the larger rooms. You can see the additional conference rooms. And you can see the mixed type of plan. Here you have one alley, the corridor, dark rooms inside, the corridor, stairs, and glazed part. Between every part, there's a courtyard, open or closed, and it can be used for recreation and for spending time during the breaks. This is how it looks like. You can see that the part of the lectures can be outside because there's cavea for that. And part of this roof is also the skylights. I'm going to show you how they work in practice. And we have several different departments, as I've mentioned. The architecture faculty is part of the School of Art and Design. And you can see the beautiful architecture of Alvar Aalto, natural materials, copper, brick, natural tiling, stones. So very beautiful use of natural materials, very simple architecture. The architecture faculty is the one by this main auditorium. Here we see the evacuation from the main auditorium. You can see that these are open staircases. Of course, you have to notice that it was made in the 50s of 20th century, so the regulations might have been different. And of course, again, in Poland, we cannot use this kind of open staircases for evacuation. We could only use this one, which is closed and goes directly to the outside. And you can see one of the auditoriums. It's a very simple, fun-shaped auditorium because here the most important is what you see, and the hearing can be provided with additional PA speaker systems, so it doesn't have to necessarily be so perfectly for natural acoustics. Of course, it's always good when it is good for natural acoustics. Here you can see the cavea that I've mentioned, and you can see the skylights. And as you can see, they have this concave spaces which diffuse naturally light, so the light doesn't go directly into the auditorium, doesn't make people blinded, but it gives a very nice natural shape, natural diffusion of light. And here you can see the screen. It was movable in this way. Of course, nowadays we are just using the screens that can be rolled down. So of course it's a quite historical layout by now. And you can see that the space under is used for cloakroom, so again, very comfortable. What is characteristic for architecture of Alvar Aalto is that the public spaces are not too high. Nowadays we would design higher spaces, but it's a very characteristic thing for his specific types of buildings. You can see the natural light, you can see the artificial light, you can see the additional acoustical systems on the walls. So the auditorium is very nicely designed. You can see that it's an old type of design, yet all the chairs have been changed to a new ones. They are quite comfortable. Of course, the soft chairs are not for comfortableness of the listeners, but they are for providing the absorbing material so that the interior doesn't go too loud. And some parts of the design, the bamboo blinds, very characteristic for Aalto's architecture. And this lowered, very vast, very wide spaces with the cloakrooms shaped in a way as Finland's lakes, which were the inspiration of Alvar Aalto architecture. And you can see these entrances to the upper part that I have mentioned. Very nice details of balustrades, details of elements which are safe and are not creating any harmful elements for any users. And here you can see the courtyard that I've mentioned, the grassy stairs, the benches, everything that can be used for students during their breaks. They can also study in this area. And here now the landscape plan. So different types of plan. We had, this one was more corridor plan, although you could see that it's a mixed type. And this one here is a landscape plan, and it's a University of it's Arizona, the part of Schaffler's Poetry Center. So it's a poetry school, it's a literature school, and you can see that the design is very landscape-like. There are frontal stairs which are on the open air, but they are part of the layout. Of course, you can see one auditorium, a large room for reading and studying. This is the loud room. You can see the quiet rooms for archives, for catalogs and books. You can also see the areas for toilets, and here a small apartment probably for somebody guarding the building or living in the building. Here we can see the island of checking the books of administration of this area. Here you can see the bamboo garden, which is a very important part of the overall university, because you can study in the bamboo garden as well, and you can reach it directly from the main room. And at the upper part, you can only see that one part is with the two condemnation, and you can see that the main study room is two condemnation room. And these are small study rooms that provide you quiet time, quiet space for your own studies, some additional kitchenettes, conference rooms, and catalogs. So not such a large plan, but you can see that it's a landscape design. So, and at the same time, it's quite useful, economical. It doesn't have lost spaces. It was finished in 2007. Here we can see the main entrance area with this landscape design of the exterior that leads towards the university. You can see here the elements of additional spaces. This bamboo garden that I've mentioned, now it's much more green if you look at the photographs from that area. And this is the open reading room. It's very accessible, open stacks, so everybody can study here, because studying poetry is basically reading. And simple section showing the relation between the spaces, showing the openness of this larger room. So very interesting design of this building, also in the section. Higher schools room types. So now let's see what types of rooms should be at every university. And this brings me back to your first Mentimeter task, telling me about a lack of space for eating, nice space for eating, cafeterias. This is the cafeteria at the Technical University of Delft. And here you can see a very beautiful design, simple but colorful, interesting, showing the industrial character of the buildings that were used for redesigning this university, and quite nice space with the skylights for eating. So we have common spaces. So these are the spaces in which you can study or meet people. Open air recreation, which should be a part of every campus, every university. Study rooms, classrooms, seminary rooms, lecture theaters, auditoriums, workshops, laboratories. I've noticed here, I've put here Lewis's, is very important, and I will discuss that later on, but especially nowadays, we will probably need to design more Lewis's than before. Halls, clinics, consultation rooms. Of course, clinics are for veterinary or medical schools. Rectory, deanery, secretary offices. Libraries, tutor rooms, tutor workshops, consultation spaces, and cafeterias and bars. Here we see a typical area for consultation for professors. These are their work study areas, because not a lot of you know that we work at the university not only with you, but we also have to work on our scientific work, on our prepare education for you. So we have a lot of other work that you don't see, and we have to do it at the school. Nowadays not, but usually we should be doing that on the school, so we should have our offices. So you can see here professor's office with a consulting room, meeting room space, rooms for assistants, rooms for younger assistants, let's call them, and seminary rooms, which could be treated also as some sort of resting space for professors. And here you can see different types of seminary rooms What is very important is to providing good angle of observation. So people who are sitting at the last rows shouldn't have the observation angle more than 33 degrees. Here you have 36, but it's a very wide room. And it's very important to have good acoustics in the spaces. And as you can see, they are not very tall rooms because they are for seminars. So they are for smaller groups of people. Here you can see different laboratory types of rooms, allowing a professor or assistant to show some sort of process, and students are able to follow that accordingly. Some of them, of course, require sinks. Some of them require additional services. Uh, at every time, you have to consult people for whom you will be designing to know what they actually need in the space that they will be working in. As you can see, this is quite old book. It's from the 1982, but in old books we have a lot of very basic information which are very needed for us, and then from there we can try to break the rules, change the rules, but we have to know the basic rules. The lecture theaters are taller and they should have auditorium which is raising according to the crown of the auditorium. In the smaller rooms, raise of 15 centimeters will be enough for your auditoriums. So here you can see a typical classroom seminar room. So it's not like a workroom, like a workshop. This is the Faculty of Architecture in Prague at City University. And you can see that the room can be doubled if needed. So you have partition walls, which can be slided here, and you can divide it. So you can have either a larger room for a lecture or a smaller for a seminar. You can always place this table in other configuration to have more a workshop room. And what is also very important is a lot of natural light in this kind of space, with the possibility, of course, of shading that if you want to use a projector. This is the lecture room. As you can see, the layout that I've shown you from the book from 1982 is still valid, a typical lecture room. It should be economical, it should be comfortable, but it doesn't have to be very fancy. And you can see quite nice sittings. The sittings are folded, so you can place more students in a smaller space. And you can see the evacuation. It's very nicely drawn here. It's very visible. So at any occasion you need to walk out, you can very easily do that. And this is the typical workshop space. So for projection, for the study of projects. And this is the Technical University in Delft again, Faculty of Architecture. Here you see presenting the frames for putting your papers, for presenting, for looking at it from a distance, for discussion. And you can see very comfortable carpeting that is here. And it's also for acoustic reasons, because this kind of carpeting allows you to prevent steps, prevent very excessive conversation to mirror, to reflect mirrorly over and over again. So it allows you to absorb the excessive amount of acoustical energy. The chairs are movable, so you have comfortable movement during your workshop room. The lecture amphitheater in Delft. Here you can see I will show you it from the front. You can see that the space under the lecture amphitheater is used for additional workshop or seminar rooms. There is additional workshop space. So during the lecture, you don't use the space, but you can use it between the lectures. You can just do your own study here. You don't have to go home to use that to work on your projects. And there are some additional shelves which can contain folders, information for students, maybe some offer of the producers. This is the communication zone. As you can see, it's very clearly marked, so you don't, so during your work, you know that you shouldn't go to that space. And the lecture room, which is a simple, very simple thing. If the lectures are not too long, it will not be so uncomfortable. If it's uncomfortable, maybe students can bring some pillows here. But of course, during the lecture, if it's not comfortable, your students will not fall asleep. So it's also some usable thing. And there's only some small space for a lecturer just to put his laptop. You don't really need much more to have the lecture. And the seminar room, which is inside of this huge orange box that I have just shown you. Simple way of solving the problem of the cloakroom. You can invite guests here. And this is more permanent seminar room, more comfortable with, again, very comfortable carpeting that is soft, that it's absorbent. You see that it looks like wooden panels, but it's not wooden panels, it's just the print on the carpeting. And you see that there is presentational railings, so you can put the lines and you can present your project, so you can defend your thesis in this kind of room. And as you can see, again, you have this solution with mobility of walls. So if you need too larger space, you just open this space. So it's elastic, it's mobile, which is very reasonable in this area. Here you can see the placement of the additional screens for lectures. If you have huge lecture room and the things that you are showing require seeing of the detail, like for example in medical department, you need to see it very colorfully, you put additional screens. And this is the proper placement, so every person has the possibility of observing these screens in the angle of not more than 30 degrees from their sitting. So this is the rule as you place the screens around the auditorium. And here you can see the section for the auditorium. So again, it's a raising type of space. It's a raising type of auditorium. This is a very interesting type of auditorium. It's again, it's quite an old example, but these two smaller auditoriums are revolving, so they can either be closed in their own space and have their own stage, or they can be revolved towards the main auditorium and be a part of the larger auditorium. One of my students did a really good project based on this concept, inspired by this concept. So it's something very interesting with the revolving part. Of course, creating this kind of revolving system is quite expensive, so we have to always think about what is the most economical in order not to make our investors pay more than they should for the project. But this is how this solution looks like. And here you can see it in the section with the two auditoriums and one auditorium when it's revolved. So it's also about the connecting of the levels. What is very important is the visibility. I have already mentioned that. And the visibility of small seminar rooms is provided by this slight arc that you see here. So none of the people, when they are sitting side by side, they are not shading their visibility lines towards the screen. And in the large auditorium, we can not only design the visibility lines, but we can also design reflections from the ceiling, which are very beneficial towards hearing what is going on. And in the smaller rooms, if it's more or less shoebox shaped type of room, then these acoustical lines will be beneficial by the idea of the design. The only thing that we should remember in the rooms with parallel walls is that they don't have to be perfectly parallel. One of walls at least should have some sort of texture or a shaping or geometry, so that we don't get the flattering echo inside of the space. Okay, so I was talking a lot about the plans, so now go to the Mentimeter.com and please try to answer the question, what plan is the best for, in your own opinion, of course, what plan would be the best for university, for higher school? Here you can see have the code with the use of your camera. And if not, I'm going to show just in a second the Mentimeter website. What plan is the best? Ah, yes, this is the voting. Sorry, I forgot about that. So this is the voting. In your opinion, what plan is the best? The corridor plan, the open plan, or the landscape combi plan? If somebody didn't catch the QR code, the code is 173210. 73210. So far, two people voted. I had a sip of water, which was very nice. And we are waiting for your voting. You can see that 4 people have already voted, 6. We had a lot of voting. I'm gonna see how many people are watching this lecture, so I will know more or less how many people I should expect to be voting. Okay, we have 22 current viewers. So I'm waiting till about 20 people will vote. Okay, I have 16 people. Maybe that's more or less everybody who wanted to vote. And let's see, the winner is open plan. Okay, that's nice. That means that you are very contemporary architects. I would probably combine the open plan with a combi plan, so they would go together. So I would have some closed rooms and some open rooms. I wouldn't do everything open, but of course, open plan resumes that some of the rooms are a little bit different. Okay. So, what other elements, in your opinion, are also important in designing the higher school, except for those who've already been discussed and been talked about? The code is 173210. Again, 174210. You just switch to the next question on your Menticom. A landscape. Yes, a landscape. We've already more or less discussed that, so I've mentioned that an open plan is also important as a part, maybe open landscape plan, like combi mix plan. Workshop for study. Yes, and we'll see that just in a second. I will tell more about the workshops. Waiting for some more answers. Materials, yes. This is what haven't been discussed so much yet. I've just mentioned the materials outside on Alvar Aalto building, but inside we need natural, pleasant materials, the materials that are good for our longer presence, because at the faculty sometimes we spend even 12 hours and sometimes even more. Individual places to study. We've already mentioned some of that. The colors in the interior design. That's another important thing. Some colors provide concentration and allows our focus, like blue color. and some colors are energizing us, like orange. So it's highly important to take a look at the colors. I haven't been discussing the colors, but as you could see, we had these examples, like we had this orange auditorium for lectures, so something that should wake you up, and mix between the spaces of the teamwork and individual work. Yes, we will still talk about that. Place to make a tea. Yes, heat up my own lunch. Yes, that's something that is missing from most of the Polish universities. And I will show you the university which has that spaces. Good connection between the rooms. Highly important thing. We'll be discussing that more. Sustainability. Yes, another issue which should be discussed with every building actually. So I'll maybe take more attention towards that. Light. I have mentioned that some of the issues with light, but I still will be talking about it more. And modular furniture for different users of the space, common spaces. Yes, that's true. Okay. Still waiting for answers to appear. That's very good input. Thank you for that. Okay, I think we are ready to go further. Of course, there will be one more Mentimeter at the end. So, what you've already mentioned, lighting, natural ventilation. Sustainability is also connected with natural ventilation. We know that all these air conditioning systems that we are using so willingly in our buildings nowadays are not so sustainable. They consume a huge amount of energy. And so it's very important to provide what we have natural, air, breeze, and lighting through the buildings. So here you can see the connection of these two elements. This is the corridor plan. So you can distribute orientation properly with the windows and the corridor, and you can ventilate and light the rooms through the corridor, using the corridor as a part of the overall system. And here you can see the cross ventilation and cross lighting of rooms, which is also very beneficial because it makes the room much better lit than with just a frontal windows. And here we can see the usage of courtyard as a part of the ventilation and additional lighting system for the building. So again, very interesting solution, especially in case of what you've mentioned, that you wish to create open or landscape plans, because this is the part of the open and landscape plans with these elements, light and ventilation elements composed into the layout. And for higher buildings, it is recommended to place the corridors in one place, so it's easier to give cross ventilation and cross lighting to rooms. Here you can see additional solutions with elements like skylights that can be used with elements with blinds, with brise-soleils, which will refract and diffuse the sun, or the skylights which are not direct, because these ones are always problematic, and additional blinds on the places where the sun is especially hard, especially severe, or additional direct elements of lighting that direct the sun rays depending on where is the sun position. So you can use also the blinds not only to shade, but also to redirect light where you want to have it. Like in the example of this auditorium of Alvar Alto that I have already shown to you. Here you can see the light distribution with the reduction of the light distribution when in a typical situation. So around 6 meters, we almost don't have any natural light inside. And after 6 meters, we don't discuss the light that is for studying, that is for working. But you have additional light shelf that diffuses the light inside of the space. And you can see that this graph is a little bit is better with the propagation of light inside of the room. And here you can see the situation where there's additional skylight, and instead of a simple dying out of the graph, the in the combined system, the light diffuses much more evenly around the room. This is the graph showing us how we should do the skylights so they would be more effective. So you can see the distribution according to the height of the room, and you can see the graph again. This is the situation where we have the skylights, and the light is evenly distributed around the room. And here is the skylight with this additional diffusion space, the diffusion arc, convex shape that I've mentioned, that allows to give us the nice soft diffusion of light. Here we have the side situation with the side skylights. This is the library. So the light allows us to spread much more evenly around the room than without that additional skylight. And this is the graph for ventilation. What is important very much in ventilation is that the air doesn't go directly through the room like this, whoosh, like a wind, because then it can cause some sort of problems with our breathing. So the light should go gently around the upper part of the room, and then it should just gently change inside of the room, because it's that this change is stimulated by this movement here. And how to inflict that movement in our layouts? We have one opening, large opening in the place where it is hot. So on the important southern side, where we have the heat. And here you can see also there's even additional cooling extension from the roof. And then we put a smaller, like this, a smaller openings on the northern side. And in this way, the air goes through. For example, in Australia, it's good to orient the building to the winds blow, if I remember correctly, from east to west. So it's better to put the buildings from east to west to obtain this kind of ventilation. So it's depending on where you design the buildings. This is the additional ventilation skylight. Of course, it can be also for light. And you can see that it creates additional movement of its own, making the air escape more willingly towards that skylight. So it's also quite good solution. And the cross ventilation, so the ventilation that goes across the room, which is also quite beneficial. Of course, in that part, we don't put the desks, we don't put the working spaces. The laboratories. The laboratories will be different depending on the situation that we have according to the science we are working on. So we have to adjust our laboratory design always to the type of the building, of the science we are designing for. Here you can see the example of the Faculty of Pharmacy, and that would be quite interesting example to study. So we have a service personnel room, we have conference areas, the secretary area. These are the areas that are accessible when you go directly from the communication, vertical communication. So there is no situation that there are some people walking around the layout searching for something and couldn't reach the secretary or the main office areas. So because it's a medical university, so it's not like everybody should be accessing at any time this kind of places. And then we have the professors area for the workshops. the areas for some special research and research labs. Then we have large students working room, so the space that is adjusted for students to study according to the professor's guidelines. And in the middle, we have all the storages which should not be accessible for unlicensed staff or for students, for example. So the chemical laboratories, the chemical storage, the glass storages, the rooms for special examinations, the coolers, and so on. So as you can see, this is again not lighted area because it doesn't require natural light. Probably natural light would be dangerous for some of the chemicals. And also you can see that is the less accessible space. So in order to access the space, you need a special permission. S-Lewis is a very important thing in the laboratory. Here you can see that before you reach the specialist laboratory, you have to go through some office space. And of course, this is the type of the Lewis, but also you can see it here. So you have the safety shower, you have the Lewis, and then you have the chemical storage. It's not accessible from the corridor. So how does the Lewis work? The Lewis is the additional room that we design between the main communication and between the specialist room. It can be a pharmacy room, it can be a chemical laboratory, it can be a sound laboratory, it can be an isolation room in the hospital, or a room for patients after the operations. So there is always this room, and it serves different purposes. The most common purpose is that the bacteria or the chemicals or the substances that are in the laboratory cannot go outside to the main communication. This is why we have double doors. Double doors allows us to create some additional under pressure and designing the proper pressure here. Here we have normal pressure. Here we have one different pressure, one level of different pressure. Here we have another level of different pressure. We make the air coming from this side to this one, so it doesn't go back. Also, if we access the Lewis, we open these doors, we close them. We change into our work clothes, we wash, we decontaminate, depending on the situation, and then we can open these other doors. So this Lewis is a place from which any substances from here cannot go outside. The same thing as we go back. We never open the double door because these doors are the part of the system. This is what we use in public toilets in Poland. You always see that we have a sinks and we have toilets inside, and you are always wondering, this is the bacteria Lewis. And this is also the Lewis for air. So the air always goes from clean zones to the dirty zones, or it provides aseptic zone here. So we clean the air from here, we clean it here, and here it's super clean. No dust can go inside. So this Lewis goes in double ways. In the hospitals, we would have sick patients here, and everything would be cleaned from here to here, so no bacteria is given to the patients. Sometimes, in some situations, there are free Lewises before you access the room. For example, for very sick patients, or for very specific types of substances that you work with, or particles, or in the physical laboratories as well. So sometimes you even have free Lewises. One door, process, another door, process, another room, process, and then you can access the actual laboratory. Let's remember about the Lewises. They are very important for an architect. Here you can see some exemplary dimensions of the labs. So for chemistry and biochemical labs from 6 till 15 square meters, botanic and microbiology for 6 per workplace, electrotechnics 6 till 8 per one workplace, physicists optics 8 10 till 10, square meters per workplace. For mechanical, 8 till 15, 18 to 15 for scientific, drawing rooms for students. For the first and second year, 2.4, 3.6 square meters per workplace. For third and fourth year, 3 meter per 6.5 per workplace, and for diploma drawing room 7 square meters per workplace. Check if you have that. Of course, this is the dimensions from the time where people were actually drawing their projects by hand. So starting from the smaller drawings going to the very large ones. Secretaries rooms about 18 square meters per room. Individual tutor rooms up to 30 square meters per room, assistant rooms 18 square meters per person, administration workers 4.5 square meter per person, researchers and technical workers 6 square meters per person. Height from 330 to 370 of meter of the space, at least, more or less. Deepness of work plane is about 80 centimeters. For this kind of work, we shouldn't go less. This is the digestorium, and this is the special chamber when you do the examinations and research. And as you can see, when something happens here, it closes and it will be ventilated with the use of special filters to decontaminate these dangerous substances that have been freed during the experiment. This is the different laboratory. This is the no echo chamber, so a chamber that is all filled with the acoustically absorbing foam in this case. Even the floor is filled with these elements. It's just covered with metal mesh, so you can walk on it. And as you can see, this kind of laboratory doesn't have reverberation. It's only for recording. People cannot stay there too long. They have to leave this room very quickly. And this is the typical workplace of the students of architecture. So this is the study room in Archip. This is the private architectural school in Prague. And so students can stay here, work here during the daytime, during the afternoons. They have shelves and cupboards for their own purposes. They can leave their stuff here. So as you can see, it's a very huge working space. It can be turned into a seminar room if needed. So this is the common type of work of the students of architecture nowadays. We have so much space, but we use just laptops. This is the modeling space, the workshop space in the Faculty of Architecture at the Technical University of Delft. A huge glazed room with additional shadings, with aforementioned skylights, with additional lighting, and the working spaces for students, strong steel tables, so you can cut on them. This is how this space looks like, and this is the thing that students have already, that you have already mentioned in the lecture. So place where you can just do a coffee or tea, take a moment to relax and heat up your own lunch. Here is the microwave. This is the Faculty of Architecture at Technical University in Delft. Here you can see the closed space for students, just to shelves for students just to put their stuff and lock them and feel safe that nobody will get to them. This is the modeling room in Prague. So this is the modeling workshop. It's closed. It's not like you can access it anytime you want, because it's a very specific with hard machinery room. So there have to be a technical worker who is keeping guidance over everything that is going on, so nobody hurts themselves. So you can use this room only when this person is accessible you have to make an arrangement before. This is so-called vertical studio. So this is the workshop room for students with two levels. So on the upper level, you have more like a meeting room, and below you have more working space. As you can see, it has the electrical plugins. It has some cutting machines, and students can spend time there. Teachers rather come to them, not students come to consultations. And of course, there is more to the studying than just working. And we need recreation spaces, we need representational spaces. Here you can see a very simple public space in front of the Technical University in Delft, but you can see that there are some chairs, tables, so you can meet here. There are some interesting elements of the design, the neons, the things that students did by themselves. So different arrangements, the models, of course. And as you can see, the materials are very interesting. It's like a showroom of some company. So you can see glazed bricks here. You can see some translucent polycarbonate materials. And this is some relaxation spaces for students. This is the library. This is the place where students can put their information about themselves when they are finishing the studies. So everybody know that these people have studied here at this university. And this is the example of Faculty of Architecture in Prague again. It's the CTU University. You can see that the plan is quite recent school. It's quite contemporary. You can see the plan, which is again a mixed combined plan. There are some dark rooms. There are some workrooms which are related with natural light, but there are also skylights because the layout is quite deep, so we need additional light going inside of the space. So you can see that the vertical studios are placed here, and from the corridor we have additional lighting. It's not a lot of light, but it's still creating some pleasant atmosphere inside. In front of the faculty, there's a square where students can put their models and can show their projects, their work. There is a security passage, so it's not like everybody can access the school, which contemporary seems to be like a very reasonable solution. And what you have mentioned about the colors, the form of the building is quite simple. It's raw concrete, and the interiors are very economical and practical. But at the same time, you can see that there's this stimulating yellows or oranges. So there's these colors that are very interesting and are breaking our thinking for a while. There are also some additional unexpected ways of walking around the building. So the building itself can be inspiring for the students and for people. This is the typical office of the tutor. You can recognize it by the amount of the projects to check. And this is the typical modeling room. So the double height studios for working. And of course, depending on the situation, we'll have totally different needs for schools. So every school will have different needs. This is very interesting example because this is the technology Behan Center for Information and Technology at the University of Toronto. And this school was very specific because, and the layout was very hard to find, because it was built between the existing buildings of university. So there was a problem with light. So in order to gain light, they created this huge multi-story skylight inside. And of course, everywhere where it was possible, the architects were trying to gain the light between the buildings, everywhere where it was possible. So it's very interesting layout, which is a layout of an outcome of going between the existing buildings. So let's see how it went. They also, because there was not enough space, so they also shared the laboratories and lecture rooms between themselves. So different departments use the same lecture rooms and seminar rooms, which is very useful because they don't have to use it at everybody at the same time. They have multidisciplinary teaching spaces. So these are the spaces where most of the ideas just appear. And this is how it looks like. So one elevation was freed, and this elevation is important due to provide as much sun inside as possible. And here you can see that building grows over the buildings. Of course, it's redrawn, so it's not a situation where the facade has uneven solution, but it's in the back, so you can gain typical light on these higher condemnations, on these higher levels. And there's, of course, a common space. And the building is sustainable. It has trees inside. It has active cooling elements with the use of water, and it is designed in a way to propagate the light 25-meter deep to the layout instead of standard 6 meters, with the use of materials, with the use of reflective surfaces. And some of the rooms are just gaining the light wherever it is possible. Here you can see the huge skylight, which I aforementioned, which is additional important elements to provide the light for everything inside of the building. And there are different examples where we don't want so much light. This is the lecture halls, additional lecture halls for University of Alicante in Spain. And as you know, a lot of you are students coming from Spain, you have a lot of light. So the idea for the architects was to cover a little bit from this light, and there are these narrow skylights between the rooms. And instead of walls, the skylights are dividing the rooms between each other. Very interesting solution. You can additionally use the blinds if you want to have more privacy in your room. But you can see that the classrooms are redistributed around these inner cores. And these inner cores have the toilets, have some dark rooms, additional spaces. And it's very interesting because the skylights are important element of division in that space. The project was remodeling from the industrial warehouse, and it was kept as a very simple thing on a simple grid of 5 by 10 meters. This is the Technical University in Łódź. It's the new campus. The campus was based on part of the existing buildings, so it's a connection between the contemporary elements and existing buildings. And you can see again a huge skylight in the middle of this building. And what I was mentioning, that depending on the type of the science you teach, you need different spaces. Here you can see the workshop for this mechanical laboratories, the laboratories with very specialistic machines. And this is the cloakroom, which is, I think, quite nice. What is very important is that every time you have to meet your client, you have to recognize their needs. You have to go to the examples of existing buildings and review people. What is good in these buildings? What is better? What could be done better? And you have to really study before you design this kind of specific architecture. You as students should basically use the books and lectures and different journals that you can read about it, because of course not every time by every project you can meet all these buildings and go to all these people. Ballet school, a different type of science, a different type of arts. Ballet schools require huge open spaces for dancing, and here you can see that they have been manifested into the elevation. You can see here the existing building, and over the existing building, with the use of existing building, quite nicely composed by this new glazed parts. There was a new ballet school in Toronto designed. What is very important, the area was neglected before the school came, and the architects wanted to propose this open facades to make people see the art that is happening inside, see the science, see the schooling that is going on inside. And in this way, they really transformed the environment. The buildings started to be remodeled, people changed their behavior. So it was one of very successful intervention in some neglected area. The school, of course, is not that huge. It's 150 students, but it has a lot of surface because it requires classrooms, photography and science labs, studios, music rooms. It requires dance studios. Of course, there's a common space, there's cafe, there is a resource center, so something like a contemporary library where you can see the movies of ballerinas, learn from that. Open spaces and screens on which you can see your performance and learn from that as well. So here you can see this historic building. It was used for administration purposes for conference area. And in the new buildings, there have been the dancing studios, lecture rooms, and all of these other important elements. Here you can see the section for the dancing studio. So you can see that every dancing studio is actually 2-story high in order to provide a proper volume for practice. So this is how it looks like in the professional situation. And you can see the relaxation rooms. You can use these common spaces for practicing. There's of course a cafeteria for these kind of spaces. And as a treat for finishing of my lecture, I would like to show you the Faculty of Architecture designed by Alvaro Siza in Porto. And as every CISA's project, you have this, maybe not every, but in a lot of these projects, you have this beautiful landscape shaping of these walkways and slopes and stairs leading to the main buildings. And then you have very modern type of contemporary architecture with the stripes of windows and quite dynamic but still kept in white forms. So this is something where we all architects would like to learn in. This is how the building looks like at the nighttime. And here you can see the faculty, the Alvaro Siza in his own, in the faculty that he designed us answering our questions. So another Mentimeter task, to go to menti.com. Here you can see the QR code, and we will have our final part of the lecture, so some sort of summary of the lecture. And the question is, do you have some questions? So it's the question and answer part of our lecture. The code is 137772. 137772. I am waiting for your questions, your comments, your observations that you have during that lecture. If anybody has some question about the exam, I will also answer it now. The Mentimeter tool is very useful because I can also see if you are watching the lecture and you are paying attention. Still 22 viewers. That's nice. It's very nice that you've stayed with me through all that time. I will just put the QR code again if somebody still wants to use it with your phone. You can photograph with your phone. I could not answer live chat questions. I hope there weren't any, but it's impossible when you were. No, there wasn't any questions at the live chat, so that's good. Okay, what is the most important in designing higher schools? It's very hard to answer this question. I think that all the elements are important, that we cannot miss out any element, because even doing a hand rail wrong will be a problematic for the future users. So I would say everything. Yes, exam will be held via Skype and it will be oral. So I will give you the sheet on Google, like something like that. I hope it will turn out okay. So some sort of typical Google Sheet situation like this one, and you will just use the timeline to sign your name, and you will connect with me by the timeline, and I will ask you the questions. I will just send you the questions through the chat, and you will have 1 to 3 minutes to prepare. You have to show me your ID, so I would know, because I don't know all of you. I know some of you. But those of you whom I don't know, I need your ID to see your name, surname, and your photograph, some sort of document with a photograph to say that this is you who are answering the questions. And you will just answer the questions through the Skype to me. I will I will ask you additional questions if needed. So take something to sketch, because some of the questions will be sketching, and you will either photograph it with the phone or show me through the camera, and we will discuss your answers. Where can we find script from first lecture? All the scripts I have put on Teams, no, on Yotsos. For you, it's on Yotsos. And all the scripts are there. If something is missing, just email me and I will. But I think I've put the script from the first lecture because already somebody asked about this. Okay, yeah. The scripts. We have this portal, as you know. So this is the portal here. I will just log in now. All of you are signed to this portal automatically. You have here the class architectural design, and here are all the lectures. You know, here are all the lectures. Okay, so just use that one. Because some of the lectures had like several folders, so it will be easier for you to see everything on the portal. How the flexibility can be assured. Flexibility is highly important, and we all should take care of that. What is important, it's not only this mobile walls that I have shown you that you can design, but also when you design flexibility, you need to think about the electrical sockets, about the placements of light sources, about the windows, about from where can I do the entrance to the different rooms. And sometimes we used raised floors to put the plugins for electricalness and login network. So it's easy to change the position under the floor. You just take some panels off, you change the position, and you have flexible surface. If you use this kind of system, remember that it has to be divided for fire safety reasons. Because under the raised floor, it would be very easy to fire for spreading. So it has to have the partitions. But raised floor is a very good system for providing the flexibility. I think that for the nearest future, the corona will change lectures into these kind of lectures, and probably we'll have the classes at the university in the smaller groups, in the workshop groups. But for the huge lectures, we will still keep the online system. But of course, it's still discussed and it still changes. So we will see that. And but I think that the corona will not last forever. So in maybe next semester will also be this partially online, partially in classroom. But probably after some time, the virus will stop to mute so quickly, or it will mute in a way that it will not be so dangerous to the human being. But also, there's a chance for a good cure or for some other solutions. But I think that that there is still a possibility that we will have some changes due to the coronavirus, at least in the next semester. What is the impact of users of the building regarding? What would be also very good would be the classes outside. What is the impact on users of the building regarding the colors of certain materials that are being used? Um, uh, Well, I have already mentioned that at some point. So all these materials that are gray, blue, that are cold, will rather keep us concentrated and calm. And all these materials that are very energetic, with a warm shades, but also yellow, orange, will keep us more alive, more energetic, more active. There are some very good articles on the website on the colors which you can find, and they are showing the different ways of people acting according to the colors. But if you want to keep your users calm, you will rather use gray and blue and maybe some colder greeneries and colors like that. Okay, I think I've managed to answer all your questions. Thank you very much for today. It was really great to see you and to meet you. See you virtually. I couldn't see you alive. And I'm not sure if I think there is one more lecture upcoming, and after that we will do the exam. But don't worry, we will try to keep it as pleasant for you as possible. So on exam, I would like you to think about your opinions, to think about what you like in the public use building architecture, what you think are good solutions. Um, also think about the accessibility for people with disabilities. Think about how public buildings react and relate to you. Thank you so much for today, and uh, and bye bye.